Kevin Durant for Zion Williamson. Two players on the polar opposite ends of the size spectrum. Psychos and sickos unite for another edition of PHNX Suns, presented by our friends over at Bet365. Download the Bet365 app, use code PHNX365 when you sign up, and find out why, whatever the moment, it is never ordinary. Over at Bet365, I'm Eric, that's Steven, Gerald, Noah behind the Mac, making all of the magic happen. We're talking a little superstar swap today, Zion, KD, multi-team trade, plus Sham's latest reports on the Houston Rockets, Devin Booker's contract extension, and of course, we're going to go through some questions, some hard questions that we would like to see asked to Matt Ishbia in X interviews tomorrow. But speaking of Matt Ishbia, we have Matt Ishbia in the chat. Shout out to Matt Ishbia in the chat. Only difference, Gerald, it's Matt with two T's.
Matt with two T's. Okay. Well,
so I wonder if they're related.
Thank you, Matt. Double the T's.
Matt. How are you doing, guys?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm doing good. I'm ready to make as little fat jokes as possible.
Are you?
I'm gonna really try to contain myself, Steven, for your guys' journalistic integrity.
We need to get the ISO shot for the middle seat. It's beyond overdue, but I think there's no more shining moment than Eric needing it.
So we're not trapped on either side of
Correct. Either that or we got to rearrange the seats again, play musical chairs, and me and Gerald could be next to each other again. Either way, something's got to give.
Listen, all I know is that if the Suns trade for Zion, it's going to be in one big fat deal.
Oh
anyway, before we get...
It took him 5 seconds.
Sorry, guys. I'm actually not sorry at all.
Not
before we
bit,
get
that's not the last
there...
one.
No, it's definitely not. Just like when Zion looked at beignets. This is the first one, but he certainly ain't going to be the last.
You have the Tony Reali ability to like shut his mic off, right? So
I'm
do that.
too loud for that. Your mics will still pick me up. That's not going to do anything.
That's a valid point.
It's not going to do anything at all. All right. Listen, Brian says I'm cooking already. Looks like Zion is going to be coming to the show. All right.
It's 3
Gerald.
Yes.
We heard from Sham Charania today
Sure.
about mutual interest between Kevin Durant, the Phoenix Suns, and the Houston Rockets.
Mm-hmm.
What was your reaction to that?
No surprise. Like that, it makes sense to me. We've been hearing the rumblings about their interest in KD and their interest in Book for a while now. We obviously know that they have tried to position themselves to making themselves ideal trade partners for the Suns by trading for those Suns picks that they had sent to the Brooklyn Nets. So it doesn't surprise me. We've been saying this for weeks. Everybody else has been saying it too. Like if the Rockets flame out early in the playoffs, they're going to be a prime candidate to want to trade for a player like Kevin Durant. Obviously, they would probably prefer Devin Booker. We talked with Mark Stein about that not too long ago. He fits their timeline a little bit better, but the Suns aren't trading Devin Booker. Devin Booker doesn't want to go anywhere, so that's just not happening. So if they do happen to get upset by the Warriors in the first round, or maybe even lose in the second round, they would make sense as a team that, you know, could see Kevin Durant as, we need that guy on the offensive end. Maybe this is our ticket.
Yeah, this feels like very analysis at this point, because we've heard it and we've seen all of the mock trades and things like that have been made since that news kind of surfaced.
Mm-hmm.
Question for you all, though, and then I'll kind of answer after you all kind of speak on it. But is it the 9th pick that people have been considering most with Durant trades in Houston coming back to the Suns?
Based on what I've seen a couple of trade scenarios where it's like number 9, Cam Whitmore, and then salary filler, basically, however you want to go about that.
Okay.
So
asking because how realistic is it the Suns actually keep that pick versus trying to flip it immediately? And that's the one I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think if you're trying to put odds on it, it would be more likely that they would trade it rather than keep it. However, I think knowing that hey, we're kind of in this tough position and maybe we're not going to be able to compete for a championship this year. Maybe there is a world, Gerald, where they talk themselves into picking top 10 in this draft.
Yeah, it kind of depends on their draft board and what it looks like and who's available at that point. I do think if you have the 9th pick and the 29th pick, I would need to look at, obviously we need to wait to see how the draft lottery shakes out and who's picking where, but you could potentially try to package those picks to either move up or to trade for a more established player, whatever. They would have a lot of options, and we have seen them in this most recent draft trade down to get a guy they like, trade back into the second round. There was a lot of talk about they could trade up, they could trade down. Like they're going to evaluate every single option if something like that were to come to fruition.
Asking, and I'm glad you both brought your perspectives, because all I've seen is in the event that the Suns do trade Kevin Durant, meaning that Durant agrees to wanting to be traded and the Suns still want to trade him, all I've seen and heard is doomsday this, throw a grenade in PHX Arena that, Matt Ishbia sucks this. And based off of what we just got done speaking about, having a healthy basketball conversation, not a doomsday conversation, we have now reached yet another avenue in which the Suns could potentially find a way to get back into the actual playoff race via picks that they might recoup from a Kevin Durant trade.
Yeah.
And that obviously is independent of whatever they might end up doing with Bradley Beal in addition to that. So for the doomsday crowd that sees no light of day past trading Kevin Durant, should it actually happen, there are options, there are avenues that will not ultimately lead them to being in basketball purgatory again next season.
So a couple things from the chat. We have David saying, didn't Mark Stein come on this pod and shoot down KD to the Rockets? So what he said is that Houston has always been trying to find a star on their timeline. Of course, the Devin Booker comments, and there are other big fish that might be able to grab that fit more of their core of a Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün, Amen Thompson. Right. And then I also like this comment from Brent because it gives a different perspective. We're all looking at who flames out in the playoffs, right? He says he sees it the other way. The farther the Rockets go, maybe the more likely they see Kevin Durant as the piece, as long as they don't win the championship. Because if they flame out in the first round, they might stop and say, there's no reason to get away all of our future leverage to try to get Kevin Durant. But if they get to the Western Conference Finals and lose in 6 or 7, or somehow get to the finals and lose, then they might think, okay, an accelerated timeline is the move. I actually really like that perspective, and it's not one I've thought about a ton.
I disagree with that last part. If they make the conference finals or the finals with the young core that they have, they're not changing a damn thing. They're running it back. They're counting on continuity. They're counting on the year-over-year progress they've made in the first 2 years under Udoka. I do think, though, there is something to that perspective in terms of if they make it to the second round of the conference finals and it's just very clear that they're missing that type of offensive piece, then I think that's still very much on the table. So I do think there's something to that thought. But if they make it as far as the conference finals or the finals, I have a hard time seeing them look at that and say, well, you know, we still need Kevin Durant. I feel like they would say, man, we got so many good players under the age of 23. We're just going to keep building with this group.
Steven, do you feel like it would be more likely for Houston to try to move in all their chips for a piece like Kevin Durant if they flame out in the first round? Because they're facing their boogeyman. They're facing the Golden State Warriors, right? Obviously different iterations of the team, but the franchises have history. At the same time, if they get too far, they might not want to trade. If they lose too early, they might not want to trade for KD. Where's the sweet spot there?
Depends on what lens is it. Do you want it to be Houston that you're trading with? Because if that's the case, then
if you want them to be desperate for KD, willing to give up the most amount of assets,
then you
for
would
him,
want them to get swept in the first round, for sure. No more than 5 games played, because if they're in a remotely competitive 6 or 7 game series, and they're holding, let's just say Golden State to 109 points in the series over 6 or 7 games. There's a formula for success there that they might not necessarily feel like they need to push the big red button right now. So I'm genuinely, it's a gray area right now for me.
I mean, listen, time will tell. We'll get into more playoff talk as it goes on. There is a team solidly outside of the playoffs alongside with the Phoenix Suns. That's the New Orleans Pelicans. I want to give a shout out to Teddy, one of our most consistent super chatters, yesterday for putting together a 3-team trade that would get Zion Williamson to the Phoenix Suns. But before we look at that 3-team trade, I want to talk about why we have gotten to this point. So there was reporting from Shamit Dua out at WSU out in New Orleans, which is their new station over there, talking about with Joe Dumars taking over as president of basketball operations, ownership will mandate Dumars to keep Willie Green and to trade Zion. This is what he's heard. It's possible the Phoenix Suns situation impacts Willie Green. We've talked about that at length, but this is the plan that he is hearing, talking about Zion Williamson's future in New Orleans. We also heard from Shams Charania on NBA Today about what the future looks like for New Orleans, and Zion Williamson says, quote, expect some very candid conversations between Joe Dumars and Zion Williamson. He is going to bring a different level of authority and accountability. Now, it would be remiss of us to not mention that part of the reason why that's being brought up is because Zion was suspended from the team this year for conduct detrimental to it, and he's at a bad spot when it comes to injuries and within the organization. So his name is one of the bigger names, along with Kevin Durant and Gerald, that is going to be in a lot of NBA trade rumors this summer.
Yeah, and look, his talent is undeniable when he is on the court. He is a borderline All-NBA, if not certified All-NBA talent. We've seen it here in Phoenix firsthand. It feels like every year he has one really phenomenal, healthy game against the Suns where he just absolutely dominates. There are not a lot of teams that have an answer for him in terms of matchups, but for me, there's just a lot of risk in this. There's so much, like when you have one president of basketball ops come in and David Griffin and talk about his health and his nutrition and his exercising and all this stuff, and then you have the next guy coming in and that's the first thing that he has to address. That's a concern for me. The just availability on top of that. If you look at his career, he's alternated 20 to 30 game seasons and 60 to 70 game seasons. So you look at that, he's due for a 60 to 70 game season next year. But if you're the Suns and you just traded for Bradley Beal a few years ago, a guy that is playing, 50 games, and we're talking about how often he misses games, I just can't realistically sit up here and say Zion is a good idea for this franchise.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this trade, but if we're just pondering the idea and thought of it, I will say that is the template for a style or archetype that I would love to see next to Devin Booker. We all talked about having a floor space in 5. I've been at the forefront of a lot of that as well. I could not agree more. A floor space in 5 will help a ton. But having a floor space in 5 and an elite rim pressure player that takes that burden of getting paint touches off of Devin Booker's shoulders would be an immense weight lifted. And I mean that with no pun intended. Because if you think about it, who's been the best rim pressure player that's played with Devin Booker since 2020-21 when they went to the finals?
I mean, in theory, it was supposed to be Bradley Beal, but I'm struggling to think of who they've
and
had.
Devin Booker finished this season as well as last season with more drives per game than Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
And that's just speaking to, this is not to cop out Devin Booker in any capacity, but if we're talking about structuring a team built around him, you're supposed to be having players that complement him, but also players that can potentially put him in position to score more easily. And that is the exact type of player. Zion, 17.7 drives a game in his 30 games this season. Third in the league. And he's a player that could easily average 20 drives a game if he was in the template of spacing that the Suns have been working with the last 4 or 5 seasons. So I don't agree that he's the player, but I think he's the type that fits extremely well next to Devin Booker.
So we have some context when it comes to the games played, the injuries, and also what trade actually lands Zion Williams, because we have Michael Morgan in the chat saying, I'm a Pelicans fan. I don't want KD. We've got Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. Well, guess what? We've got a trade for you, courtesy of our diehard Teddy, or our super chatter Teddy, that doesn't land KD in New Orleans. I think this would have to be a multi-team trade, and we're going to take you through one of those, look at Zion's stats, and continue this conversation right after our first break. I don't know how many times I can say this, but I'm going to keep on saying it. It is going to get damn hot here, and it's going to get hot soon. I know it's actually been really nice outside. Spent some time outside the last couple of days. It's been pretty awesome. Enjoy it while it lasts, because there's going to be 115 to 130 degrees here in Arizona within the next month. I can guarantee that, and I can also guarantee you that All Pro Shade Concepts is going to make it way more comfortable for you to spend time outside. If you spent all this money on a home, on a place to live, you want to use every piece of it, and that includes your backyard patio, and you can extend that outdoor living space with a custom fit awning with hundreds of designs and colors, with the roll down patio shade that keeps your patio up to 20 degrees cooler and out of the sun. You can match your HOA's requirements for what your house needs to look at. They're the most trusted local shade company. They've been doing it for 20 years in the Valley, licensed, bonded, and insured. That's All Pro Shade Concepts. Call 623-204-1476 or visit allproshadeconcepts.com right now to schedule your free estimate. And if you want to save some money, which I would highly recommend, everybody does, I gotta give you our friends over at Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile is the best place to, you can say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and of course, unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you. No matter how you say it, don't overpay it. Shop data plans at mintmobile.com/sons. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. Ditch the overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for $15 a month. Go to mintmobile.com/sons. That's mintmobile.com/sons. Upfront payment of $45 for a 3-month 5 GB plan required. That's equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees are extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Is Zion Williamson going to be mobile and moving out here to the Phoenix Suns? Well, here's one way that that can happen, as we ask y'all to leave a like goal, as it always is 125, but I love it when we smash that and get right above it. Let's go ahead and take a look at a 3-team trade where Kevin Durant lands in Miami. This is a pretty simple one. Zion to the Suns, KD to the Heat, and the Pelicans receive Terry Rozier, Duncan Robinson, and 2 first-round picks. I'm interested in Michael in the chat, who's a Pelicans fan, what he thinks of this deal. Steven, from all 3 teams' perspectives, yes or no?
I mean, for the Suns, it should be a no.
Okay.
For the reasons that we just got done speaking to prior to the break. The Pelicans are going to certainly want more than Terry Rozier, who I don't even think Miami wants right now. I think they're regretting that trade that they made 2
under
seasons
investigation
ago.
also, by the way.
On top of that, exactly. Duncan Robinson, fine piece, but don't know if they see value in him the ways that other teams might. And the 2 first-round picks are dope, but it feels like they're going to want more in that from New Orleans. And I spoke to the Suns already, so I'm not a fan of this trade. I don't know. I'm curious what y'all thinking, though.
No, not at all. I mean, I guess it would make sense for Miami.
Yeah.
To some degree.
Because
right. Then you would have to continue to build around Kevin Durant, because you can't just add Kevin Durant to what that team currently has and suddenly everything is fixed. And for Kevin Durant, I think it's more so like, I'm at this point in my career, like, yes, I could go to Miami and love living in Miami and I'm going to be happy hooping wherever, but like, what are our prospects? Like, Eric Spoelstra is a great coach, but that's a regular play-in team now, especially now that Jimmy Butler's in Golden State. So even for Miami, who it makes the most sense for in my book in that hypothetical, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I don't think the Pelicans would take a deal like that. If you're going to get only 2 first-round picks for Zion, you have to be getting like young players that kind of fit what you're trying to build there.
And don't they start creeping close to that second tax apron in this trade scenario too? So talking about building around KD, that further stifles that process as well.
Yeah.
So a couple different opinions in the chat. Michael says not the biggest fan of the players coming back in the trade because they have a couple younger players that fill those roles as well. I think the 2 picks is interesting. I don't know how low Zion's value is going to be considering the injuries and the fact that it's very public that New Orleans is going to be trying to trade him, or at least that's what the reporting is right now. And then there's Christian in the chat who says it could pay out. Can't be worse than this season. And Z-Dude says, why is everyone acting like Zion is Greg Oden, LOL? I'm not even a big Zion guy, but he's genuinely crazy when he plays. Yes, he has lots of drama and injury concerns, but he is still young. So I would say no to this trade. I just want to put that out there. Overall, I would say no to Zion Williamson. That is just not the type of trade I'm looking for in a KD swap specifically. However, I do think that there's a little bit more to this than just a straight up flat out no. So I want to just go through some of Zion's stats from the last couple of seasons and his career so that we can kind of paint a picture of who this guy is. Let's start with his career stats. Just overall since being drafted, number one, he has averaged 24.7 points per game, 6.6 rebounds per game, 4.3 assists per game, 58.9% from the field, 32.7% from three, and 214 games played, which is not a lot. So let's look at this year's stats and how that plays in, because like you said, Gerald, not a lot of games played this year, but when he did play, you saw some pretty big improvement from a couple categories. Not scoring on the career averages, that was a little lower at 24.6 points per game, up on the rebounds at 7.2 rebounds per game, up on assists at 5.3 a game, a little lower field goal percentage, 56.3, a lot lower 3-point percentage at 23.1%. Only 30 games played. But the last season that I want to show everybody and just remind everybody is Zion Williamson's 2023-2024 campaign. Now, ironically, this does end up with him being injured for the playoffs, but the Pelicans were an extremely good team in 2023-24 when Zion played. He played 70 games that season, averaged just about 23 points per game, 5.8 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game, shot 57% from the field, and 33% from three. I think this 2023-2024 season, if you are going to talk yourself into getting Zion Williamson, that's probably what you want the sweet spot to be at. His averages are a little lower, Gerald, but 70 games played would be the biggest factor there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, he is an all NBA caliber player when he does play. The problem is that 70 game season is a career high for him, and it's one of 2 times in his 5-year career that he has played more than 60 games. Like, you look at his career averages, he's averaging about 42 games per season. So even if you take out the extremities there, you're basically getting a guy for half a season. That's not good enough for the Suns, especially if you're trying to build around Devin Booker. Like, Zion, if he's healthy, is the exact type of player you would like to put next to Devin Booker. As Steven said, he's a walking paint touch. He's a guy who gets the majority of his points around the basket. He's an athletic freak who would give him, a pick and roll partner. He's a guy that can get downhill at will. Like, he's also a good passer too, averaging about 4 assists per game. Mm-hmm. So like he's more than just a, bowling ball going downhill. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, you need him to be available. We've seen what happens in recent years when guys are not available. Key significant players are not out on the floor. So for me, and the fact that his 70 game season ended it in injury, like you mentioned, that's just kind of the unfortunate cherry on top of that whole situation for me.
Yeah. I think you said it perfectly. A lot of the numbers and whatnot sound good as like arbitrary numbers, but if we're talking about fit and context and availability more than anything else, the reason the Suns traded Chris Paul is because of injury more than anything else.
Yep.
The reason there's been much disdain for Bradley Beal has been because of injury more than anything else. You don't want to repeat that, but triple down on that specific template, because that's just going to leave you with leaving more to be desired yet again. And it's going to stagnate Devin Booker in his prime in terms of winning at the highest level yet again. If that's the premise that we're operating off of, you can't be repeating the same mistakes that you made in years past.
I think that the injury stuff is certainly the biggest concern. I think there are a couple other concerns when it comes to Zion Williamson as well. Obviously, conduct around the team has been a problem that New Orleans has had beyond just the results with his injuries, but his overall weight. Here are a couple of things that are baked into his contract. Like, this is written into the number 1 overall picks contract. 20% of his 2025-2026 salary becomes guaranteed if he passes all 6 of his weigh-in checkpoints during the 2024-25 season. 40% of his 2025-2026 salary becomes guaranteed if he plays greater than or equal to 41 games during the 2024-25 season. An additional initial 20% if he plays greater than 51 games, and the remaining 20% if he plays greater than 61 games. Salaries for the 2026, 2027, and 2027-2028 seasons can be re-guaranteed if the above metrics are hit the season prior. His weight must be less than 295 pounds with body fat monitored. And he also has injuries, this is in his contract, sustained to his right foot, which is part of the reason why they want to keep him under that weight. It's really tough, and the talent is certainly there. And I do think that if we were in 2K and we're turning injuries off, Zion Williamson would be an incredible fit next to Devin Booker. I mean, this guy scores in the paint at a rate that like only Shaq can compare to. And that's not hyperbole. That's statistical analysis. And if he was on the court for this team for the 30 most important games at the end of the season in the playoffs, I think that it would be a pretty big problem for teams to try to guard a duo of him and Devin Booker. But that being said, I know that Z-Dude in the chat says he's not Greg Oden, and I get that, but he is a big dude with foot injuries, and he's a dude that has a lot of weight problems and seemingly like personality problems and responsibility problems. And we saw what a player in a similar light, but in a different way, with Devin Booker did in that dynamic, or what DeAndre Ayton did with Devin Booker, right? And how that didn't mesh. Play styles, I think, would fit perfectly. I think personality, you can't find farther apart guys than Zion and KD, than Book and Zion. And that, to me, is maybe even a bigger reason why I wouldn't take this risk.
Yeah, I mean, some team, it's going to be worth the risk for them. And it could be a risk, a gamble that pays off, because he only turns 25 this season. If you put him in the right environment, maybe get him better people around him wherever he goes next, better influences that keep him in check there, he could pan out and he could wind up being a steal for that team. But the Suns are not the type of team that can afford to take that kind of risk right now, especially given the way that Bradley Beal has gone, especially given the fact that, like, we're looking at a summer where you're going to be hiring a head coach. You might be hiring a new GM and restructuring your front office. You're going to be trying to potentially trade Kevin Durant, get out of Bradley Beal, reshuffling the deck completely around Devin Booker. Like, there's just way too much uncertainty. So as much as Zion on paper sounds great, in actuality, you cannot afford to put that much investment in a player who might only give you 30 to 35 games.
Yeah, you cannot repeat the same mistakes that you've made in years past. You have to evolve your process. I spoke to that specifically in coaching, but that can be copied and pasted to your decisions on front office executives. Should that be the route you decide to go in terms of overall change this summer? And naturally, that also goes for any talent that's being evaluated to come into your context as you try to evolve your process and get back to even where you started prior to being swept by the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah. And I also want to note this, because I saw a couple comments about this. This would have to be a 3-team trade. Like, you couldn't do a straight up 1-for-1 swap with the Pelicans, because the Suns have no one in his $39 million salary range. They got the 3 guys that are in the 50s, which would be too much for the Pelicans to take back. And the next closest guy is Grayson at like 17 million. So,
yeah. Well, so I also wondered too, if let's say like we're past the Kevin Durant side of things, let's say there's a Kevin Durant trade, you get some type of win now player back, not a superstar, right? And some draft capital, right? Something that you can move around. Like you mentioned, the Rockets number 9 pick, just something that you can work with. What about, and I'd have to do the numbers on this. This is just me spitballing here. Bradley Beal and some draft compensation for a guy like Zion. If you're already getting a win now player from KD and you take some of whatever draft assets or capitals that you have from that, if the Pelicans are desperate because they can't find somebody who wants Zion and they lower their price, is that something that you would be willing to do? Obviously, putting aside the fact that New Orleans would probably have to go crazy for doing that.
Yeah, there's no way New Orleans would ever do that, and they would have to shed salary to be able to take Bradley Beal back, because like I said, there's no way a 1-for-1 trade works there on the Pelican side of things either. But like, yeah, I mean, it depends on what the draft capital is that the Suns got, depends on how much is going to New Orleans. Like, their price tag would have to go really, really low for that to ever be realistic to me.
Yeah, for me, it depends on what you get in return in sequence with those trades. Is it going to make sense to be able to flip? And if what you get back, is it going to be able to match with potentially bringing Zion in? If if you already get a 4 in exchange for a trade that going without Zion, and then you look at bringing him in, like there's overlap, it doesn't make sense. So it just matters about what position it is of the highest quality that they're bringing in before that for me.
Well, this is not going to be the last time that we talk about big names, big trades, especially centered around Kevin Durant. Before we hit our second break here, let's read our super chat here from our diehard Psycho Blue. By the way, we are having a sale on our diehard memberships. $36 gets you access for the entire year. The shout out to the NFL draft coverage. That's why we're giving you a $36 discount. That's $3 a month. Gerald, you get all of your articles. We're going to have some film breakdowns for our diehard folks during the season. We do pregame shows. We give you availability through being a diehard. You get a free t-shirt when you sign up, which basically pays for itself with a $36 diehard entrance fee. Plus, you get 20% off all of our live events, plus so much more. Go to gophnx.com/join to get that special offer today. Speaking of special, our special diehard Psycho Blue, $5 says, Wendy pointed out that plenty of teams would be fine with KD as a one-year rental to boost ticket sales. Hope we can keep KD, but if not, best deal, please.
Potentially, yeah. I think some of the playoff teams that we've heard mentioned, I don't know if that is necessarily as true. I think it maybe would be less competitive teams that would be like, yeah, we get KD for 1 year. Let's put some butts in the seats for a little bit.
But would KD want to go there and they're working mutually is the question.
Well, so I think if it comes to that, the point there is it doesn't matter what KD wants because you're getting the best return.
Yeah.
And one team would be like, okay, we only get him for 1 year. He doesn't sign the extension with us. At least we have him for that 1 year. Because KD's not the type of guy who's going to like sit out. He's not going to.
Welcome to Charlotte, Kevin.
No, and I don't imagine that should all existing parties agree to a trade, KD would be sent to a scenario where he's not going to actually want to be there and have a chance to contend in some capacity. So for all those contexts included, I just can't see him going somewhere where they're going to value putting butts in seats over winning.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Well, we have questions that we need to ask a certain somebody, hard questions to Matt Ishbia. We're going to go through what we want to hear tomorrow during exit interviews, what the fans need answered. We're going to do that right after another break. Is your team trading for Zion Williamson? You might want to get new flooring or at least reinforce it. And you can do that with our friends over at Empire today, baby, because guess what? They're not going to leave you hanging like a big box store. No, they are not. They're going to make sure that you are taken care of with their flooring experts who eat, live, sleep, breathe, and that other thing, flooring, every single day of the week. With Empire today, you get clear upfront and all-inclusive pricing, plus you can schedule installation as soon as the next day, because the last thing you want to do is make a big decision. They go, oh yeah, we can do that in October. No, I want to do it tomorrow. Empire today can do that tomorrow. Plus, you can schedule a free in-home estimate today, because some things are just better at home. Plus, you PHNX Suns listeners can receive a $350 discount when using promo code PHNX. Yep, you heard that right, $350 off with promo code PHNX. Restrictions apply. Visit empiretoday.com/PHNX for more details. We have Noah Smith in the chat asking me to say his name. Yes, I'm talking to you, Noah Smith. You need to be a member of Circle K's Inner Circle, Noah Smith, because Noah Smith, you could be saving money every single day with Circle K. And Noah, make sure you write down April 24th. April 24th is 40 cents off per gallon from 6 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. for Inner Circle members only. And if Noah Smith, you are not a member of the Inner Circle, I highly recommend that you do that. Plus, you can save so much more as Max brings over a giant Polar Pop on drinks, snacks, everything in between by being an Inner Circle member. Of course, beyond the 40 cents off that you get on April 24th, you can also get 25 cents off per gallon on the first 5 fill-ups. Megan, you can get 25 cents off on the first 5 fill-ups as well. 3 cents off per gallon every day after that, eventually bump it up to 5 cents off per gallon as well. Join the Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details.
Fueled by who?
Circle K.
Fueled by who?
Polar Pop.
Yeah, definitely, because that's the size of the gas tank for sure.
Well, I'm about to say, that's a Zion Williamson type cup right there.
Oh my God. He couldn't resist.
See, I tried to segue us out in there.
You did. You
I'm
almost got
bringing
us
us
there.
back in. Gerald, are you going to be asking about Zion Williamson at exit interviews tomorrow?
I will not.
Another question. Are recording devices, audio and video devices, allowed for exit interviews tomorrow?
Thankfully, we are not the Mavs, so yes, they will be allowed.
Relevant question. Very relevant.
Obviously, Gerald, exit interviews are a little bit different this year, seemingly because, of course, Mike Budenholzer has been fired. No players for exit interviews. So who are Suns fans going to hear from tomorrow?
It's a great question. We don't have clarity on that yet. I'm pretty sure we'll hear from Matt Ishbia, and beyond that, in terms of front office, whether we hear from James Jones, whether we hear from Josh Bartlestein, I'm not 100% sure. All that I know is that it's probably definitely going to be Matt Ishbia, and then we're going to go from there and kind of ride this roller coaster and see what the deal is with the front office moving forward.
Steven, let's say you're up. You get the first question. It's a Matt Ishbia there. What question does Steven Prejean Garner want answered from the owner of the Phoenix Suns?
I'm going to be looking for clarity. I'm trying to piece things together. I know you can't predict the future to a T, but you can at least get a peek into the mindset. So I'm asking, what is the plan going into this summer as far as what you have on your roster? How are you assessing what you have on your roster? And what would you be potentially looking to bring into your context going into next season? But also, probably even before that, head coaching wise, what is it that you're looking for quality wise in your candidates? Are you looking for someone younger? Are you looking for someone who's been around the block as an actual head coach a few times before? Are you looking for someone that maybe is an understudy? What is it that piques you all's interest? Because you haven't done a good job with your last selections. So I'm trying to gauge and see if the process has evolved and what potential answers he might give up in that answer.
I like that question. I also like Hello's question, which is, can I have $5 million? That's the tough question that we need.
Surefire way to be the last question that you asked.
I think
so. You're not gonna. That's the tough question, Gerald. That's how you fix the Suns.
I think a lot of people think I would ask that question, but
what would you? I mean, obviously, you're going to be asking questions tomorrow. What's at the top of your mind?
Yeah,
for Matt Ishbia specifically.
Yeah, I mean, to Steven's point, like the qualities in their next head coach is critical because you have failed 2 years in a row to get this hire right. You need to find some stability at that point. So what are you targeting in your next head coach? And what didn't work with Mike Budenholzer that you are now going to correct course from these last two failures? Obviously, I don't know that we're going to get a lot of insight, but it's a question that has to be asked in terms of what is the plan with Kevin Durant this summer? Yeah. Because for the last year or so, it's been we're going to sign him to an extension. And then it was, we're going to sign him to an extension next summer because he can make more on a 2-year deal than he can make now. And now it's like all the reporting is we're working with him on a trade. So does he still want to be here? Do you still want him to be here after he was dangled at the trade deadline? Bradley Beal, what does his future look like? Like how much of a priority is it to get off of his contract? And then obviously the future of James Jones and Josh Bartlestein. Are you going to let James Jones' contract expire? Is Josh Bartlestein still going to be here? Are they going to be in the same roles? Are you going to bring in a new GM? What's the delineation of front office decision-making? Like, I think those are all crucial questions moving forward because to this point, like I've been saying over the last week, there are a lot of questions and a lot of different interpretations of who does what between Matt, James, and Josh. And I think that needs to be a priority to clarify this is the clear delineation of responsibilities here.
You know, I don't like to give Hello too much credit, but I like what he's saying. Girth needs to ask how he can ask harder questions. Do you have?
It'd be good to get feedback.
Matt, Gerald Bourget, PHNX here.
Yeah.
How can I do better? What are your thoughts on that? I think that if I'm not asking those things, because those would be the top of the mind for me, I would like to know what Matt Ishbia's message is to Suns fans, because obviously he cares, right? He really wants to involve the community. You could tell by the decisions to make the Suns free to watch on the antenna. You could tell by the $2 hot dogs. And I think $2 waters gets underrated in all of that too, because I remember when I went to the one Suns game I went to this year and I went and got waters, I was like, $4?
Yeah.
What? Like it caught me by surprise, right? So clearly he cares about the fan involvement. I would want to know what his message is to the fans after so many have checked out from this past season and don't feel a lot of hope going forward into this summer and into the next one. So That's kind of how I feel with Matt. But let's say we get Josh. Let's say we get James. Do you guys have different specific questions or things that you would want to try to get out of them?
I feel like they would be kind of similar. I do want to touch on the Matt Ishbia thing one more time, though,
Please.
because I think, like, to your point, his message to Suns fans, I want to know what he thinks of the perception that he is the one that is making all of these decisions, the new owner syndrome label that he's gotten, the over-involved owner label that he's gotten. I want to know what he thinks about all of that. Because that is definitely the perception that not a lot of owners around the league have in terms of being over involved. But to your question, Eric, I think in terms of questions for Josh and James, like James, obviously, have you had conversations about what your future looks like with your contract being up this summer? With Josh, it's, do you have any regrets about any of the trades that you've made? Like, is getting under the second tax apron a priority? What's the plan with KD and Beal? Similar questions there. Do you have regrets about building around a big three model in an NBA that is, the new CBA is designed to punish that specifically? I think a lot of the similar questions for Matt Ishbia I would have for them as well.
Yeah, it would be similar questions. Obviously, cater specifically to who it is that's going to be receiving it, but would be the same questions, trying to get insight as to what the plan of action is going forward. But that will have to come for those two after, or specifically for James, after asking, has there been any progress made? Like, are you coming back? Like, you know, what's the next step there before getting to what is the plan after that?
Yeah, I agree. I think clarity was the number one thing that you said, and it feels like that's something that we have nothing on. Like, what are you going to be doing going forward? What does the future look like? Except for one thing, right? Devin Booker. There are reports that Devin Booker will be offered a 2-year contract extension from the Phoenix Suns, and that he's likely to accept that. I want to know what those conversations have been like with him. I don't know if this is something we'd get answers to, but if we're playing in La La Land where we can just ask whatever we want, how involved is Devin Booker in deciding what the future of this franchise looks like, what the next head coach looks like, especially considering something that Brendan Clean put out there when Bud was fired, the last 2 head coaching hires, it seems like they've gone against Booker's wishes. However, they got Kevin Durant, which I'm sure Booker wanted, Chris Paul, which I'm sure Booker wanted, right? What is his involvement, and how important is it for you to capitalize on what will now be the year 29 season for him? He's almost 30, over a decade in the league, and you have clearly made him your franchise guy. What's the plan with him moving forward?
Yeah, that's pivotal, and it's a good question, especially because all the reporting that we've heard in terms of everyone is on the table except for Devin Booker. He's going to get that extension. He doesn't want to leave Phoenix, and they're not trading him. All of that is pointing this towards he's going to have significant input this summer in terms of head coaching, in terms of roster construction. He said it in one of his last interviews when he was talking about being more vocal and thinking about what didn't work this summer, and he was asked who he was directing that to, teammates or front office, and he said everybody. So I think everything is pointing to him being the focal point. We already knew that, but it is a good question to ask moving forward what, you know, the future holds in terms of that extension and what level of input he has in all of these decisions moving forward, because to this point it feels like he's had input, he's been able to give his opinion, but both times in terms of the coaching search, at least, they went in a different direction.
Yeah, I think this is a major opportunity for growth on his part. Maybe being more vocal and more involved intentionally from the front office's side of asking him more questions, maybe, than they did in years past. Just, you like KD? Obviously, the answer is yes. You like Chris Paul? Obviously, the answer was yes, especially at that time. So, like, those are easy answers. But when you have a void to fill and you have a field of options that you're going to be choosing from, maybe you condense that to X amount of options, and then you ask him, who do you like most out of this group, and what are your reasons why? Yeah, like there's avenues and ways in which they can go about navigating that, but I think that this will be an offseason of growth for him.
I think a very funny thing to ask. Hi, Gerald Bourguet, PHNX, father of Goku. I'm sure you've heard. Bradley Beal, thoughts?
Yeah, that's kind of
set the table.
Yeah. Just let them take it away.
Just no actual question. Just the name. Just the name to see the physical change in their faces.
Who would this question be for?
Any of them, but probably Matt. Honestly, I feel like you'd get the more raw reaction from Ishbia than you would from James Jones.
I think he has. They all have a poker face.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you don't get the facial expression.
But again, we're living in La La Land here, where we're just getting answers or whatnot. Like,
I think James and Josh have the poker face. I don't know if Matt does. Matt's usually pretty upfront when he talks to us.
He's like, all right, no more questions. I need the next 25 minutes to talk about this guy.
But I do think, to your point, like a lot of the reporting that's been out there, I've been saying for a while now that their top priority is to get off of Beal's contract. Gambo went out there and said that there's a 0% chance he'll be back on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do they just up front come out and say, yeah, Beal's open for business, or do they kind of, beat around the bush a little bit? I know I'm not going to ask this question, but I'm sure someone will probably ask about the 26 out of 29 teams would be in our would rather be in our place.
Put Noah in there. Get Noah to ask that question.
That's the type of question.
Matt.
That's the type of question that if it's phrased correctly, maybe you could get a good response as to his thinking and how it's changed over the last year.
Mm-hmm.
And if phrased poorly, it's just going to come off as like you're trying to dunk on him, and you're going to get a very short and stiff response.
Yeah, that's for y'all that don't really know how the media space works. That's a question that you only ask if you have built up a relationship over the last 2 years with Matt. That's not when it's, hi, I'm XYZ. I know you've never seen me before, but I'm trying to hold you accountable. And it's going to be like,
who are you?
Respectfully, who are you? Right.
Donzel, a.k.a. Be Calm, See Clearly here. Matt, can I get Devin Booker's number?
There you go. The hard questions.
I think obviously, like when we mentioned clarity and what the plan is and all of that as well, I would like to revisit what happened at the trade deadline. I think there was some reporting out there. I'm not sure from who, and maybe I hallucinated this in like dreaming or something, but that the Suns did regret not involving Kevin Durant in trade talks. But then also hearing from, I believe, James Jones or somebody after the trade deadline feeling like they did not need to rehabilitate that relationship, where that relationship stands. Obviously, like what does the day-to-day communication go like between Kevin Durant, who's going into his final year, in a summer where he's expected to be traded, and a front office who's expected to trade him? Is there anything else that we're missing here?
I mean, look, we're probably not going to have enough time to ask all of these questions. I would like to get some of their perspectives on the rookies' seasons and how much their getting benched played a factor in Mike Budenholzer being let go, whether there was more to Mike Budenholzer being let go, the future of Colin Gillespie on top of all that. These are very, very low on my list because, you don't have an hour to just sit down and ask away. You get 1 to 2 questions depending on who you're talking to, and then you got to pass the mic to the next person. And at that point, you have no control over what is asked from that point on. So you got to make your questions count. So we're going to be hitting on the main ones mostly that we've already covered. But there are a lot of questions that I have for this upcoming summer, and hopefully we're able to get answers to most of them tomorrow.
Yeah, the only other one for me is, have there been conversations with Bradley Beal about exercising the no trade clause or uplifting it? And what, not, you obviously can't ask where he would want to go, but have you had those conversations about him doing so?
Yeah.
And gathering a list of teams that could potentially be facilitated in that trade with him?
Yeah. And I think that because all the reporting that I've done that has been done by ESPN and everywhere else has said that they never asked Bradley Beal to waive his no trade clause. And the reason for that was because they didn't have a concrete trade to offer him. And so they weren't going to broach that until they actually had something lined up for him. But it is a question worth asking in terms of like, what's your feel for the situation in terms of would he be open to a move? And we reported here, I wrote about this, Mark Bartelstein, his agent, had said, we don't deal in absolutes. Like if the right trade presents itself, we'll listen. That works for everybody, but you have to get to that point where you find that trade.
Yeah. EC in the chat says, I don't think we get any real answers tomorrow. Well, guess what? We're going to take you through all of the answers, real or fake, all right here on PHNX Suns. Show to be there in person, asking questions. We're going to bring you everything you need to know from the exit interviews and who the hell is even there to answer the exit interviews. We are going to answer some super chats, take a look at the play-in action from last night, predict tonight's, and then, of course, some playoff matchups are set up as well. Stay tuned with PHNX Suns right after our final break. I always use the story of me finding my wife her best birthday present of getting her concert tickets with Game Time. But what I don't share is more recently, I was able to, with my wife, celebrate our anniversary by going to a Suns game. The Suns game that I got cheap water at was because we found tickets with Game Time. It ended up being the game that Kevin Durant scored 30,000 career points, and we were able to get in the building because we used Game Time picks, which filtered out the fluff and found the best seats with the best view at the best deal guaranteed. And if we were for some reason able to find the same type of tickets for a cheaper deal somewhere else, Game Time would have given us 110% price match guarantee, but I've tried it. It's just not possible. Game Time is the best, cheapest place to get tickets. They have all-inclusive pricing that you just switch on, so take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account, redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, and that's guaranteed. And what also is guaranteed is 100% win percentage from me, not in my bets with Bet365, but with our betting competition, courtesy of our friends over at Bet365. You can roll your eyes all you want, Steven, but the reality is I walked away a winner.
You didn't get a trophy for that.
I don't get a trophy. That's why I got to brag during my Bet365 ad reads. But Bet365, the app, the interface, it's so easy to use. One of the favorite parts of my game day experiences certainly was not watching the Phoenix Suns, but going on Bet365 in the morning and trying to figure out what the hell was going to happen. And if you have not opened up an account with Bet365, well, guess what? You get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. All you have to do, sign up, use code PHNX365, deposit 10, place a bet for 5, and get 150 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. You must be 21 plus and physically located in Arizona. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, text NEXT-STEP to 53342, or visit problemgambling.az.gov.
Facts, hello.
What did Hello say? Yes, Steven just needed one more 15-leg parlay chance to win.
No biggie, but give me one more chance.
He was right there.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
I think Francis in the chat thinks that I'm Gerald. I'm not Gerald.
Oh, I'm Gerald.
That's Gerald.
That's Eric.
I'm Eric.
He's
That's
Steven.
Steven. Noah's behind the Mac. Making all the magic happen. That's going to do it here on PHNX Suns. I mean, we just walked into that one.
Nailed it.
So Ghost is asking a question about a potential KD Cat trade. I think that is a great question.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of time in this offseason.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to be getting into more Kevin Durant trades specifically. We have a super chat about it right now. We'll touch on quickly. Ghost, don't worry. A Cat KD trade is definitely something we're going to be talking about, but just not today. We don't have time for that today because we want to give it enough time to really sink our teeth into it.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a $4.99 super chat. I believe the first ever super chat from my father, from
Papa.
Jeff Ruby. Papa, thanks, Papa. Says, any chance we get some big names from the Celtics or Lakers or young legs from OKC or Pistons for KD and others?
If I get something right there, you answer that first.
Probably not. OKC is definitely somebody where you're kind of watching them on flame out watch, but they have so many assets, and I don't really know if they're going to be looking to add Kevin Durant to that core. Obviously, there is a relationship with that team and him. Pistons, I don't know if they're ready to make a big move yet, but if they feel like they are, possibly. Lakers, I don't think so. Celtics, I know that there was some Jaylen Brown talk and all of that. I would say all four of those teams, I would not hold my breath.
Yeah, I think the Celtics would still have to get out of the second tax.
Yeah, there'd have to be a couple moves adjacent to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I wouldn't. I don't think the Lakers have the flexibility for that. OKC may be the most likely, but they would have to go home early in the first or second round, and I don't see that happening.
And they'd have to not be able to cash in on a younger piece that matches more of their timeline, and they have the assets to really go get any available player they could possibly want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 3 out of those 4 teams is highly unlikely. I think there is opportunity that may arise with the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
There's been rumors that because of the weight that certain players in their role-playing realm have been able to step up to and play at in a sustained manner all season long, to cost cut and keep themselves ahead of the books and away from second and third tax apron constraints and things like that, they might be potentially, and I say potentially, willing to shed with a player like Kristaps Porzingis.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if he is even the slightest bit available, there should not be another team that beats the Suns to the front door of the Celtics than Phoenix.
Yeah, Pistons is interesting. I don't think that they would do it, but hypothetically, let's say they make it deeper in the playoffs than we think, but there's just some clear deficiencies there when they run into the top of the top. In the East, do they try to push all their chips in the center? Noah, who's a Pistons fan, is shaking his head. But think about it. Isaiah Stewart can make a song and Kevin Durant can feature on it. Did you guys see the Isaiah Stewart song?
I did.
You didn't see it?
No, not yet.
Oh, I have to show you.
Hey. It's playoff time. Lock in.
Yeah, what's going on?
Hey, it's
Lock
play in time.
Lock in.
All right.
No, it's playoff time.
That's the most
Play
animated
in.
Steven's been on this entire
what you
show.
mean? No, that man said no.
He said he hasn't heard
I
Isaiah
think they
Stewart's
posted it from the
song.
Pistons account.
Come on.
Like,
It's play in time.
He said,
Lock
be a better
in.
fan.
hey,
You
lock
better-
in.
Come on, man. I've never seen him this animated before.
That's great.
Ever.
You should be,
Thanks for the
you should
super
be
chat, Dad.
screaming redacted basketball. No free ads.
Oh,
Lonnie with a $1.99 super chat says Penny Hardaway for head coach next season. I'm
Love me
okay.
some Petty.
I like Penny, but I'm okay on that.
Yeah, you've mentioned a few college coaches, and I've respected those coaches for what they've done on the collegiate level, but also spoken to for coaches that preceded them that did not see success in any capacity, making that transition from the college game to the NBA. Me and Gerald talked about John Beal yesterday and how that whole debacle with not the Celtics, with the Cavaliers went. That's just one of the
about
most
Patino?
recent examples of that. Yes, you can go to
Calipari?
Patino, you can go to Calipari. There's a handful of other names that you can kind of go down where
there's a former Suns head
wasn't the most successful. Yeah.
One of Devin Booker's former head coaches.
Lonnie follows up with the $9.99 super chat. Thank you so much, Lonnie. You're always so
Appreciate you, Lonnie.
consistent. Says head coach Penny, a former Sun, former superstar, has done a great job at Memphis and young enough to relate to the players. If I'm looking at a college coach, I think I'd want them as an assistant coach, like Nate Oates, but he would never do that. Nate Oates as an assistant coach, offensive whiz would be awesome. If Penny wants to be on the staff, that's great. Head coach, I can't take that risk right now.
Yeah, he's won about 70% of his games at Memphis, which is really good. But in terms of actual postseason success, he hasn't made it past the round of 32 in the tournament. So just something to keep in mind. I love Penny, but yeah.
Espo says Lil Penny for coach.
Lil Penny.
Well, that would be the
There you
assistant coach, right?
Yeah,
It'd be
exactly.
Penny and then assistant coach Lil Penny. But what did they clash? Okay. Any final thoughts on anything we've talked about before we get into a little play in action before we wrap up here on PHNX Suns?
Nope. Let's do it.
All right. Well, last night's action, some pretty interesting games. Well, at least one of them and some of the stuff that happened in it. Orlando taking the work to Atlanta, 120-95. Trae Young ejected. Steven and I were wrong. Gerald, you were right. Congratulations.
Thank you. I didn't have it being that much of a blowout. I thought they would win. But
I didn't know they could score 120 points.
Correct. They didn't either.
No, they found something within themselves. I think, I mean, haven't they been playing better? Like, obviously, the injuries to Franz and Paolo kind of derailed their season. I feel like they have been playing better basketball recently. So I don't think they're going to do anything against Boston, but
Yeah.
good win for them.
Yeah, I agree. Paolo Banchero is dressing like it's 2003, so maybe they'll do something.
I think they can probably pose as much of, not even going to say a threat, but they can make Boston work in ways that other teams cannot because of Franz, because of Paolo, because of the levels that defense of theirs can reach. Was, I think, top 4, if I'm not mistaken, and they flirted with like top 2 and top 1, even when the Cavaliers and the Thunder were at the peakest of peaks with their defenses. That defense is real. And that's one thing they're going to do. So if they can get a game into the mud and it's like 99 to like 96 with like 2.5 minutes left, that's right in their hands in terms of having an opportunity.
If you're a Suns fan and you're looking at Orlando as a potential landing spot for Bradley Beal, what you're rooting for is for them to compete really close with Boston and the defense to hold strong, but for their offense to flame out. I mean, if they're putting up 120 in playoff games against the Celtics, which I don't think they'll do. I don't think they'll do. But what you're rooting for is they have enough success to convince themselves that they have a core and they have a base that can be a winner, but not enough offensive firepower specifically in the backcourt. So if you are watching that series as a Suns fan, that's what I would be keeping my eyes on. If you're keeping your eyes on us on TV, the party always continues over at GoPHNX.com, which means it's time for overtime. Let's go. Thanks, everybody, still tuning in here on YouTube. And, of course, our beautiful audio listeners as well. Hit that like button. Leave a 5-star review while you're here. The other play-in game last night, a very good game. Golden State, 5-point win, 121-116 against Ja Morant and Memphis, securing, like we mentioned earlier, a Rockets-Warriors 2-7 matchup in the West.
Yeah, no, that was a fun game. It was closer than I thought it was going to be, and it was closer than it looked early on. Memphis made a really nice push in the second and third quarters to make it a game again. But man, it's hard to watch the Warriors play as Suns people because I don't think that Jimmy Butler, if the Suns had found a way to trade Bradley Beal out and get Jimmy Butler in, I don't think they still would have fixed everything and been title contenders. But there were a lot of people that were kind of talking themselves out of Butler and saying that he wasn't going to make any sort of difference on this team. And you're watching the run that the Warriors are going on. I don't know what they're going to do in the playoffs. I'm not even saying they make it out of the first round necessarily, but they've been a completely different team since he arrived there, and watching him put up 38, 7, and 6, like it was pretty much kind of like, man, it must be nice. Must be nice.
Playoff Jimmy.
They're one of the most atypical 7 seeds.
Yeah.
Not unlike I forgot what year it was, but the mid-2000 Spurs that kind of ran through the West, but it was because of injury that they were like the 7th or 8th seed and just undid the entire bracket.
Mm-hmm.
I can certainly see the Warriors operating in a similar manner, albeit it wasn't really injury. It was just more so roster flaw, and then Jimmy comes in and boosts everything, particularly the non-Steph minutes.
Yeah.
But also boost the minutes with Steph on the court too, because now you have someone else that's as valuable with the ball and dynamics respectful to him that unlocks Steph off the ball even more. That team is great.
Mm-hmm.
That team is just great. Their 3 best players have a collective and shared IQ.
Yeah.
I think that part is not valued enough when you're talking about building a team. Do those players share an IQ to where, okay, if Jimmy has the ball, the offense is not going to stagnate and just lose flow. If Draymond has it, not even going to happen. And obviously, if Steph has it, it's not going to happen. That puts them in perfect position in clutch time to execute, put teams in compromise, and we literally saw that on the last play. What we talked about yesterday, involving your 3 best players in action in crunch time, that's quite literally what we saw with the Golden State Warriors last night. Jimmy Butler with the ball in his hands, inverted pick and roll with Steph, comes off of that screen, and then Steph gets a flare from Draymond in an empty corner. You can't be right as a defense. You send 2 to Steph, Draymond's wide open for a layup. You don't pay attention to Jimmy, he can get down, he'll get to the free throw line or hit a midi. And if you leave Steph, obviously you know what time it is with that. Yeah. Even if you don't leave him, you see what time it is. And that's exactly what we saw yesterday. So
Golden State only 4 games behind the Rockets in a 2-7 split. That is not a far difference. Golden State also has the same record at home and away this season. So Houston having home court advantage in a building that Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr have had some success in the past decade.
Though, the caveat is that they're not going up against a specific coach that was coaching those teams.
It's fair. It's true.
And they also aren't going up against a team that was built the same way either.
Correct.
That team
it's
was
completely
built
different Houston.
Strength for strength, and this is opposite sides of the spectrum. Yeah. Playoff basketball at its finest.
It's going to be a fun matchup for sure. So obviously,
over under on ejections.
Oh, Dylan Brooks and Draymond Green are going to kill each other. So that's only going to be 1 ejection each because they're going to be dead.
I'm going to say 2.5.
Steven Adams and Draymond also going at each other too.
I like
Can Draymond get ejected 4 times in the series, or would he be suspended at that point? He'd be suspended, right? Give me, I think I'll take the over on 2.5. I'll take 3.
Okay.
I think it was political, but someone asked Steph last night about if he heard what Ime was saying about him from the last time they played about 2 weeks ago when Houston basically blew them out and held Steph to like 4 points.
Mm-hmm.
And Steph, he had that kind of sheepish grin on. He was like, "Nah, I didn't even hear nothing about that, man." Dude is evil.
I think Ime might get ejected.
That's why I'm bringing it up. Dude is evil. Steph is evil. He's gonna have a 50 ball in that series for sure, and it's probably gonna take place in Toyota Center.
God, I really, really hate that the Suns suck this year because watching you talk about good basketball and the way that it lights up your face, it's just like, oh, we could have had this.
It's my first love.
Yeah, screw the Suns, man. Okay, so obviously the losers of those games, Hawks and the Memphis Grizzlies, will be facing the winners of tonight's game in the East, Miami, Chicago, your Bulls, and Dallas, Sacramento. Real quick predictions, Miami, Chicago.
I'm going to take Chicago. Why not? They've been playing good since the All-Star break.
Yeah, they've been playing well against Miami, especially. Chicago. I got the Bulls. Expect for this game to be surprisingly good. I don't think it's getting this kind of primetime ticket attention that the games yesterday had, but It's going to be a good one. I think the Bulls are going to win it, and they're going to make it ugly because they've been playing a lot of zone, as we saw when they played the Suns late in the season. That's been Miami's Achilles heel on offense. I think they can make that one very interesting.
Usually if I looked at Miami, Chicago, and I said Chicago, I'd throw up, but I actually do agree with you guys. I think Chicago wins, which means they're totally going to lose tonight because there's no reason all three of us should be picking Chicago.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Dallas, Sacramento, there will be audio and video devices recording inside the arena tonight. I think so. At American Airlines Center, Dallas, Sacramento, who wins?
I hope Dallas, for the sake of their fan base and for the sake of their players too, because their players have had to put up with a lot of crap and hear the talk, the constant talk, and it's deserving because it was the dumbest trade I've ever seen in NBA history. But they've been playing scrappy and motivated for a while now. The Kings have been up and down and all over the place over the last few weeks. They do have home court advantage, but I'm going to take Dallas in this one.
Yeah, I've still had a hard time with Dallas. I know they've made strides, especially when Anthony Davis has been healthy.
Yeah,
I'm still going with Sacramento, as I mentioned at the end of the regular season. I think DeMar DeRozan has one of those vintage games in him, and I also think Zach LaVine is going to be out for some vengeance as well. So
yeah, I'm taking the Kings because the Mavericks are going to just be miserable. There's so much bad karma in the air. I think some of their fans are actually rooting for them to lose because they don't want any sort of positivity at all for Nico and company. At least we're not Mavericks fans, right? Okay, Lonnie with a $4.99 super chat before we wrap up here says, JJ Redick had zero coaching experience. Traditional isn't working for us. I get what you're saying. I don't know if I want a college coach. I think JJ is a very unique situation.
Yeah, he is the capital A, matter of fact, all caps anomaly.
No, that's Jason Tatum. Hashtag the anomaly.
And keep it in the Duke family, huh?
Yeah, I guess so. All right, well, we're going to wrap things up here on PHNX Suns. Guess what? We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. bringing you everything you need to know about exit interviews, breaking down last night's play-in game, and so much more. But you can follow along on socials until then, Instagram, and, of course, on Twitter at PHNX_Suns. We appreciate Noah behind the Mac making all the magic happen, including a bunch of graphics today. I also will have additional mini-pod going out on video and audio at 6 p.m. PHNX Sports and your PHNX Suns feed about Rich Paul explaining why the Phoenix Suns' big three did not work. Highly recommend you check that out. I believe it's under 10 minutes. Should be a nice, quick, easy, digestible listen for you. Again, right here on PHNX Sports and on PHNX Suns audio feed. We are almost at 40K subscribers here on PHNX Sports, so if you are not subscribed yet and you tune in every day, you're hurting my feelings. Stop it. Hit that subscribe button. Help us get to 40K. Also, become a diehard today for just $36. You can follow Steven at StevenPG3. That's Steven with a PH. You can follow Goku's dad at Gerald Bourget. You can follow me, Goku's godfather, at ERIKRUBY. That's the laugh I was looking for. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.